Welcome to the Thursday the Thursday edition of the Hard Starboard Radio Network, and the first live podcast of 2016 Anno Domini, ladies and gentlemen, here at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I am always, and always will be, your host, Jasmius, your ruler, your benevolent despot, your fountain rabbi of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and this is important, pay attention, common sense. Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, through today as far as the time slot, because, of course, to the best of my knowledge, Hard Starboard Radio is a live podcast. It debuts Monday, January the 4th, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific at patriotinsightradio.com. Now, I qualify it a little bit because my contact with patriotinsightradio.com is kind of difficult to get a hold of. So I've fired off some the last batch of questions, the details as far as how the mechanics are actually going to work. I mean, do I Skype into them? Do they Skype into me? Guest call-in numbers and so forth. Haven't heard back yet. I asked those questions on Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday, one of the two. Haven't heard back. Now I figure, well, yeah, it's New Year's and so forth, but still, I'd really like to hear back and get all this ironed out, nailed down, because quite frankly, I don't want to be doing that, early Monday afternoon. I'd kind of like to have all that worked out beforehand, so that I don't have to worry about it. Suffice it to say that if there's any delay or if there's a train wreck, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, then I'll be talking about it here, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific Monday. But hopefully everything will go off without a hitch. Everything, the table will be set, everything will be set up, everything will be worked out, ready to go, and we will roll on patriotinsightradio.com, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on Monday. And in the meantime, the guest call-in number here, 646-478-5068. Email address, jasmius@comcast.net. The place to send your requests for any of the 200 episodes of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs during its 3.5-year-plus run on KCAA AM 1050. As far as the other podcasts are concerned, 8.5+ years await you where you are right now. blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. 6 1/3+ years await you at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. Airing Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. It is the kickoff of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. 3 hours culminating at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. With Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET 1490 AM, KMET 1490 AM.com globally, and tomorrow, and I just learned this about, a little over an hour ago, I received a call from Mr. Gibbs, and he has, let's just say, a booth, an El Primo excellent location booth at a local gun show just fell into his lap yesterday. So he is going to be at that, and just as back on November 28th of last year, I will be sitting in for Mr. Gibbs on Constitution Radio. It'll be Constitution Radio with Jasmius tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, KMET 1490 AM, locally KMET1490AM.com, globally for the local show with the global footprint. I'll also be all by myself on American Daily Review tomorrow, so I'll just do the same thing they did the last time. I'll just go chronologically through the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week. I won't rank them in terms of importance or whatever. I'll just go through them as they unfolded throughout the week. And, since it was another holiday week, it was, there weren't as many stories, so there won't be as many All-Star Collision big stories of the week, which provides more of a chance to get a little bit more in-depth with them and to them. Now, unlike the last time, Alex Ferguson will be calling into the show, so there will be I'm assuming, the Book of the Week segment. So I don't know what Alex has read this week, but that's his segment to produce, not mine. All I have to do is cut him off by the second commercial break. I don't have as much difficulty doing that as Mr. Gibbs does. When we come up to, heck, I cut off Waleed Shabbat once when I was sitting in for Doug as we were approaching the second commercial break, because the show schedule is a show schedule. And you can be a little bit more loosey-goosey when you got 2 or 3 hours, but not when you got 1. When you got 1, you got to roll. You got to stick to your breaks, or else you come back from the second commercial break and there's only like 10 minutes left in the show. And that's been known to happen with our good friend Alex Ferguson. I tell you, you let that, God love him. I respect Alex. I like Alex. I wish I could meet him in person. But when he gets talking about commies and the Cold War, he builds up a momentum that's, it's kind of like a train. If you try to stop him abruptly, everything just piles up, and it's a sort of train wreck. But you drop little hints along the way. 2 minutes, Alex. 1 minute, Alex. 30 seconds, Alex. I'm cutting you off, Alex. So, and it'll be fine. Like I say, the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week, brought to you by All-Star Collision, located at 522 Railroad Street in Corona, California. Any auto body detailing need you have, anything from a scratched door to a dented fender to a sunroof you didn't plan on, to an entire caved-in trunk, the Patriots at All-Star Collision are there for you. Only place to go in the Gibbs pocket of Southern California. Log on to allstarci.com to find out who they are, what they have going on, what they're all about, any specials they happen to have at the moment. If you want to talk to a live Patriot, dial 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of wreck and roll. And they bring you the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week. Continue to do so loyally. And we are very grateful for them, because, frankly, without All-Star Collision, Constitution Radio probably would not be on AM radio, but honestly. Of course, on the other hand, it would be on, well, could very well be on PatriotInsightRadio.com in that case. But now, eventually, the plan is for American Daily Review to migrate over to PatriotInsightRadio.com as well. I have many fewer details on that. But that's something to look for in the near future, and as soon as I have the details, I will pass them on. Although, I will be passing them on in live terms on PatriotInsightRadio.com, I'm assuming. Anyway, between here and PatriotInsightRadio.com, you'll find out what you need to know, or just check PoliticalPistachio.com, where I will definitely post updates as they become available. But like I say, as far as I know, January the 4th, 2016, this coming Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, Hard Starboard Radio debuts as a live program on patriotinsightradio.com. And then the podcasts I will endeavor to post at blogtalkradio.com/HSR network the next day. I'll endeavor to do so. I think I should be able to do so. It's been a long time since I've actually tried to overwrite a recorded podcast at blogtalkradio.com/HSR network. So I will see if network, like, or government and beacon, whatever. I have no idea what Flycatch was trying to say there in the chat room. I'm not sure who they are, and I'm not sure what to make of they work like or our. Okay, that's probably what he meant. I guess but in context, that's a reference to PatriotInsightRadio.com, and I don't know. I mean, I've interacted with one person from that site so far, so I can't speak to how they actually run. I mean, if you go to PatriotInsightRadio.com, you see a page, just the front page, and it says brand new Patriot Insight site launching on January 1st. Well, today's January 1st. I mean, I'm hoping that doesn't mean 2017 as opposed to 2016. So there may be some delays, or I don't know, people sleeping off New Year's Eve hangovers, or technical difficulties, or something or other. That might suggest that there will be some delays in debuting and so forth. Again, I will keep you posted at certainly at politicalpistachio.com, if no place else. If there's delays, well then the other place to look for updates would be here, blogtalkradio.com/HSR network. One way or the other, I'm not going to miss a beat. The only thing that would be missing is starting to get paid for the beating, so to speak. And of course, because I keep falling asleep before I can get to it, I haven't made up the YouTube videos for upload to our YouTube channels yet. My apologies. YouTube.com/HeartStarvedRadio, YouTube.com/American Daily Review 2. Haven't gotten them done yet. Sorry, I know I said that again. I said that yesterday, but I haven't gotten it done. I haven't gotten it done. The subscribers want to see updates, and unlike several occasions this past fall, I can say this past fall because now we're into 2016. Unlike those occasions, I don't really have any good excuse. So. Anyway, and now we begin the slow climb toward Memorial Day to continue the periodic roller coaster paradigm. You know how you get into the new year and you start slowly climbing your way out of winter, and then you get into spring, and then you get to Memorial Day, and then it's June 1st, and then it's right down the hill, and then all of a sudden it's Christmas again. That's how the year unfolds in terms of temporal perception. So now we start the long climb, and of course it's not like we won't have things to distract us. Yeah, things to distract us indeed, and well, since I brought them up, why don't I get into them, shall we? I promised you a look back and a look forward. And surprisingly, I had quite a bit of difficulty finding either one. But I did find George Will's column for the look back. I thought it was very appropriate. Certainly lines up with my assessment of the just almost universally loopy political times in which we're fated and condemned to live. He referred to 2015 as the foolish finish, and I couldn't agree more. E.B. White reportedly said the most beautiful sound in America is the tinkle of ice at twilight. Speaking of which, whatever happened to that the Northern Lights last night? I wrote about this yesterday at politicalpistachio.com. There's supposed to be a Class 3 solar magnetic storm coming in that would generate what would it generate? Oh, yeah. Northern Lights as far south as Oregon or Illinois, or I guess that would correspond to like Pennsylvania or Maryland, latitudinally speaking. Or longitudinally speaking. And I went out last night after it got dark, and it was actually clear. It was clear in the Pacific Northwest, the Puget Sound region. It was clear. I was astounded. So I go outside and I look, and nothing. I looked up. I looked toward the north. Nothing. And I thought, well, maybe it's get here a little bit later, and went out a little bit later, and nothing. And then I dozed off after 9 o'clock, and then I woke up, and I went outside. It was after midnight, and nothing. So I don't know what in the world happened to the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis, that was supposed to grace our skies at this latitude, or longitude. I keep getting that mixed up. Latitude is equatorial, longitude is polar. But it never showed up, so which actually is a good thing, because that meant that means that coronal mass ejection either wasn't as bad as they initially estimated, or it turned out to have missed our planet entirely, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. I just was kind of had my aesthetic hopes raised, because I've never been to Alaska or above the arsenic circle, so I've never gotten a chance to actually see the Northern Lights. So I was kind of, I think there might have been once in my lifetime when they come down this far from the pole. So I was kind of looking forward to that. So I was a little bit disappointed in that sense. But on the other hand, well, let's just say thank God for Earth's magnetic field. If you don't believe me, watch the movie The Core when you get the chance. You'll see what I'm talking about. I would rather not be a peach in the path of a lighter being hit by an aerosol spray sprayed out of a can, creating a flame, creating a blowtorch in essence, incinerating peach. But I know, I just made you want to go out for peach cobbler. But you're here taking notes. So at any rate, in 2015's twilight, fortify yourself with something 90 proof, at least, as you remember this year in which we learned that a dismal threshold has been passed. The value of property that police departments seized through civil asset forfeiture, usually without accusing, let alone convicting, the property owners of a crime, exceeded the value of property stolen by non-government burglars. The Attorney General of New York, which reaps billions from gambling, casinos, off-track betting, the state lottery, move to extinguish competition from fantasy football because it is gambling. Florida police raided a mahjong game played by 4 women aged between 87 and 95 because their game stakes allegedly exceeded the $10 limit set by state law. A Michigan woman was fingerprinted, had her mugshot taken, and was jailed until released on bond because she was late in renewing the $10 license for her dog. New Jersey police arrested a 72-year-old retired teacher, chained his hands and feet to a bench, and charged him with illegally carrying a firearm. A 300-year-old flintlock pistol with no powder, no flint, and no ball, so it wouldn't have worked anyway, that he purchased from an antique dealer. The University of Georgia said sexual consent must be not just voluntary. Oh, no, that's easy. Oh, yeah, voluntary. No, it can't be just voluntary. It must be voluntary plus sober, enthusiastic. I'll leave the interpretation of that adjective in this context to your imaginations. Creative. Oh, God. Wanted, informed, mutual, and honest. Imaginative consent? Well, can't the person seeking the consent just use his imagination too? No, that's sexist! Connecting climate change to sex, yeah, that's how we're going to get screwed. Yeah, I know. The National Bureau of Economic Research warned that hot weather leads to diminished sexual activity. I don't know. It just makes the flesh slapping sound a little moister. That's the only thing I ever thought about that. Elsewhere in settled science, quote-unquote, the government's dietary rules were revised, somewhat rehabilitating red meat, sodium, and eggs, and other good stuff. But undaunted, the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, there really is such a thing, apparently. Oh, let's see. What did they do? They produced a 571-page report calling for bold actions and dramatic paradigm shifts. Uh-oh. When they start talking about paradigm shifts, look out. Until Mother Hen government yet again says, well, never mind. I know. It's a cycle. Since federal food police dictated changes in school lunch programs, food tossed in the trash is up 56%. Salt shakers are being smuggled into schools, and there are black markets in potato chips. The IRS persecutes conservative advocacy groups. Remember what the IRS stands for? Intimidate Republican supporters. But does not... Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking about the Tea Party. Never mind. They don't support the Republicans. The IRS persecutes conservative advocacy groups, but does not prosecute IRS employees who are tax cheats. An audit revealed that over the last decade, the IRS fired only 400 of the 1,580 employees who deliberately violated tax laws rather than the 100% required by law. I'm going to go way out on a limb and say that those the 1,180 employees who were not fired for deliberately violating tax law were probably Democrats, and the 400 that were fired were probably Republicans. Just going out on a limb. But it seems like a educated guess. New York City's Council honored the bravery of Ethel Rosenberg, the executed traitor who spied for Stalin. Declaring her candidacy, Hillary Rodham Clinton said she will fight for, among others, truckers who drive for hours. Yes, hours. I'm driving a truck, driving a big old truck, rolling down the highway with my accelerator stuck, rolling down the highway until the crack of dawn, driving my truck with my high heels on. Elsewhere, she rejected the presumption of innocence, aka due process. Those alleging sexual assault have the right to be believed, which she did not believe when her husband was the accused. A 9-year-old Florida 4th grader was threatened with sexual harassment charges if he continued to write love notes telling the apple of his eye that her eyes sparkle like diamonds. Remember that single that William Shatner released in the late 60s about something, 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 and diamonds? Remember that? I don't remember any of the title or the lyrics except for diamonds. A Texas 9-year-old was suspended for saying his magic ring could make people disappear. Oh, how does that Green Lantern oath go again? Something about something, 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 something. No evil shall escape my sight. By my power, by the power of Green Lantern's light, or something. I don't suppose that Texas 9-year-old would lend me his magic ring, buddy. I could imagine quite a bit. And after 2.4 years of will backup, I got a lot of will at my disposal. A young girl was sent home with a censorious note from her school because her Wonder Woman lunchbox violated the school ban on depictions of violent characters. Not because just about every picture of Wonder Woman I've ever seen has her ample bosom almost falling out of her Amazon costume. I mean, that goes all the way back to Linda Carter in the 70s. Wonder Woman! An Oregon 8th grader whose brother served in Iraq was suspended for wearing a t-shirt that depicted an empty pair of boots representing soldiers killed in action. The school said the shirt was not appropriate. Not appropriate for what? People with foot odor? Hell, just tell them to bring a pair of Dr. Scholl's next time. Leave the shirt alone. A Tennessee boy was threatened with suspension from elementary school because he came to school with a military-style haircut like that of his stepbrother, a soldier. Whereas I'm sure most of his classmates had mohawks. You know, the kind that go not front to back, but from ear to ear. A government arbitrator prevented the firing of a New Jersey elementary school teacher who was late to school 111 times in 2 years. What would that be? That would be about, well, that'd only be about a third of the time, if I recall the length of school years correctly. A suburban Washington high school promoted self-esteem by naming 117 valedictorians out of a 117 valedictorians out of a class of 457. Unfortunately, the graduation ceremony took 2 weeks. But I'm sure they brought in cots for the occasion. Well, but the local hotels did one hell of a business for that period of time. Two Edina, Minnesota elementary schools hired recess consultants to minimize conflict. You know, like children saying, "Hey, you're out," rather than "nice try." The principal of a San Francisco middle school withheld the results of student elections that did not produce properly diverse results. Oh, God, you just can't get away from that, can you? When some deep thinkers in academia decided that yoga, like ethnic food, constitutes cultural appropriation, you're not taking my sweet and sour pork, I'll tell you that much. A clear thinker wondered whether offended cultures would send back our polio vaccines. I'm guessing no. The American Council of Trustees and Alumni reported that 48 of the top 52 liberal arts colleges and universities do not require English majors to take a Shakespeare course. Come on, don't they want to hear what he did in his second bed? This list of 2015 ludicrousness could be lengthened indefinitely, but as the Klingons say, "Marry up!" Enough already. The common thread is the collapse of judgment in and the infantilization of society by government. And it ain't going to get any better in 2016. Well, I've already pretty much given you my 2016 predictions, all boiled down into one word. Or one sentence. It is going to be the most cataclysmic year in American history. And I use the term cataclysm deliberately. I'm not talking about space impacts or gamma ray bursts. I'm not talking about anything cosmic. I'm talking about anthropogenic cataclysms. It could come from any number of different directions. Could be one or more or all. So, I'm basically saying doom. But I'm not the only prognosticator. Although I'm pretty good. But I'll give you what David French had to say. And the headline sounds optimistic. America will elect its first Latino president. And last I checked, Donald Trump was not a Latino. New Year's predictions are always perilous. The only thing that's truly predictable is that unpredicted events will upset the most careful plans and surprise the most seasoned professionals. Look no further than Donald Trump's shocking rise and enduring popularity as proof that pundits and consultants often don't know half as much as we think we know. But we can always count on you to believe that we always know much more than that. You're not buying that, are you? But it takes more than a few surprises to drive us out of the prediction business. So with full knowledge that everything I say is liable to be proven wrong within days or weeks, here goes with a few modest predictions for 2016 Anno Domini. America will follow its first black president with its first Latino president, and the media will be anguished. Because, of course, first Latino president will not be a Democrat. But Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz wins a convincing election night victory, don't expect the media to gush about a new era in American politics or the next great milestone in American inclusiveness. Instead, expect rending of garments and gnashing of teeth, with much hand-wringing that America is going backward into a new era of intolerance. Because communist politics trumps identity every single time. GOP electability will be less important than Hillary Clinton's corruption. Yeah, I hope he's right about that. I think pundits are underestimating Ted Cruz's electability, and because they're missing perhaps the most sure thing prediction for the new year. Mrs. Clinton's email scandal is the beginning, not the end, of the Clinton corruption stories. The Clintons are corrupt. It's in their political and personal DNA. If they couldn't conceal their corruption during the old media 90s, good luck concealing their petty favoritism, pay-to-play, and personal decadence from the voracious and omnipresent new media, which really, when you get down to the granular level, is just whoever happens to have a phone with a camera on it. I don't think Donald Trump wins the nomination, Republican nomination. My current handicapping places Cruz with the best chance to win, followed by Trump and then Rubio, leaving open the outside chance that political lightning strikes and Chris Christie or Jeb Bush or Carly Fiorina surges to victory. But no, that's not going to happen. Besides, can you imagine Chris Christie surging anywhere? And I'm not talking about in the polls. I mean, maybe if he hasn't showered in a week, but I think everybody would certainly be getting out of the way in his lane. That's certain. But I think the long-term effect of the Trump phenomenon will be an increased fearlessness on the part of GOP politicians. A heightened awareness of the genuine concerns of the blue-collar conservative base, and an understanding that political correctness holds power, true power, only with communists. Those sound more like aspirations than predictions, but again, I hope he's right. Democrats will suddenly remember that Hillary's loss in 2008 had as much to do with Hillary as it did with the magic of Barack Hussein Obama. How long have I been saying this, folks? I mean, Jasmy's echo syndrome is so pervasive, sometimes I have to remind myself to point it out. It's just the way of things, I guess. The Democrats' story of the 2008 primary goes something like this. Hillary was caught flat-footed by a once-in-a-lifetime communist, or Islamo-communist, by the force of nature that was the Obama campaign. And she made mistakes. No one could have beaten the one. But she learned from her loss, moved smartly left, and is ready to ride the coalition of the ascendant to the White House. Yet, while Obama surely ran an outstanding primary campaign, he got a lot of help from an opponent who often sucks the charisma right out of any room she enters. And, well, just plain sucks. Never forget that in 2008, Hillary finished third in the Iowa caucuses behind even the execrable John Edwards, if you will remember him. Meanwhile, and I got to agree with this prediction. I've been saying it all week. I mean, last Sunday clinched it for me. In the world of sports, the Arizona Cardinals will win Super Bowl 50. I absolutely concur with that. I hate it. It's undeniable, in my opinion. And the San Antonio Spurs will beat LeBron James once again and the Cleveland Cavaliers once again to claim the NBA championship, which we don't really care about here in Seattle since they diddled us out of our team. And yeah, that was 7 years ago, or no, that was 8 years ago. That was 8 seasons ago. We don't forget up here. The Cardinals, along with the Chiefs, own the longest winning streak in the NFL and possess the largest point differential. And the Patriots have suffered injuries to approximately 150% of their roster. Same thing with the Seahawks. I still don't quite believe in the Panthers. There you go. Easiest schedule in the NFL. And by the way, do you know who had the second easiest schedule in the NFL? The Arizona Cardinals. What can I tell you? Whereas the Seattle Seahawks schedule was, I believe, the 11th or 12th most difficult. As for the NBA, the Spurs are built from the ground up to beat they should be called the Oakland Warriors. And only Kawhi Leonard or injury can slow down Stephon Curry. The Spurs will beat the Warriors in 7 and then go on to beat the Cleveland LeBrons to claim their 6th title in the Tim Duncan era. He's still playing? Wow, I had no idea. Jon Snow is alive, and before Season 6 is over, Tyrion Lannister will ride a Targaryen dragon. Whatever the hell any of that means. Oh, Game of Thrones. All right. I don't watch that show. At this point, most Game of Thrones fans simply assume Snow is alive. The only question is how. But the more interesting inquiry involves Daenerys' dragons. Who will ride the other two? Before the season is over, the second rider will emerge, and it will be none other than the hard-to-kill fan favorite Tyrion. He's been every bit as central to the overall Game of Thrones story as Jon Snow and Khaleesi, and this is the season when he starts to assert his dominance. In related news, George R.R. Martin will release the latest book before Season 6. There's just way too much money at stake. And finally, when in doubt, bet on the pendulum. You may notice that I'm predicting a bit of a conservative correction in 2016, a return to the center-right after the communist triumphalism of the Obama era. This is, of course, all assumes that Barack Obama doesn't cancel the 2016 election and declare himself president for life, which I will not be completely convinced that he's not going to do until after Ted Cruz has taken the oath of office a little over a year from now, and Barack Obama, pedals off into the sunset all the way to Hawaii. And, heck, if he's a messiah, if he can't walk on water, certainly he can ride on water, right? American politics often swings back and forth, with one party rarely dominating for long, which is why ideology alone does not determine who wins elections. It's undeniable, folks. I could be wrong, but my sense is that the left overpromised and underdelivered in the Obama era, which they couldn't have done anything else. That's why that's another reason why Barack Obama has become such a despot. Wars rage and incomes are falling for all too many in every economic strata. The hectoring, sneering political correctness of the communist left repels more than it inspires. But then that's always been the case. Let's see. Oh, no. Go up further up the list. There we go. No, not that one. Here. I had to find the audio I was looking for, the bumper music. So Happy New Year, my fellow conservatives. Should we expect to win a few in 2016? Well, I'm not the person to ask that question. The Ben Carson update theme after the break. I must break the news, the bad news, if you're a Carson fan, of the implosion of his presidential campaign. We'll be back with hour number 2 right after this. Final hour of the week. Final hour, if all goes well, live on blogtalkradio.com/HSR network. But again, I will keep you posted on all that about our scheduled premiere on patriotinsightradio.com Monday, January the 4th, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Yes, Ben Carson's campaign has imploded. I'm not just referring to in the polls. I'm talking about a campaign in disarray. And the interesting thing about it is that Dr. Carson's campaign looked like it was imploding 7 months ago, back around the first week in June. Whenever I say anything that is a discouraging word about the Ben Carson campaign, I always have to preface it by pointing out that I like Ben Carson. I have immense respect for Ben Carson. Ben Carson is way smarter than I am. A neurosurgeon, separated two Siamese twins join at the head. I mean, you talk about a steady hand. But just because somebody gives a speech and you agree with what that person says down the line, bam, 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 100%, that doesn't qualify him to be president. And I think a lot of people talked Ben Carson into running for president. I don't think he ever really had the fire in the belly. I don't think it was ever really his idea. I think he was talked into it. And it's funny because not even a month after his campaign began, this was the state of it. I wrote about this at politicalpistachio.com almost 7 months ago. It was first week in June. Quote, the presidential candidacy of Ben Carson, a Tea Party star who was catapulted into the top tier of Republican contenders, has been rocked by turmoil with the departures of 4 senior campaign officials and widespread disarray among his allied super PACs. In interviews, Carson's associates described a political network in tumult, saying the retired neurosurgeon's campaign chairman, national finance chairman, deputy campaign manager, and general counsel have resigned since Carson formally launched his bid either late April or early May in Detroit. They have not been replaced, campaign aides said. The moves gutted the core of Carson's apparatus and left the 63-year-old first-time candidate with only a handful of experienced advisors at his side as he navigates the fluid, crowded, and high-stakes contest for the Republican presidential nomination. Now, back 7 months ago, I could hear the "Run, Ben, run!" crowd loud and clear. These defectors are turncoats, traitors, they got bought off, etc. Any finger-pointing excuse to escape the reality that perhaps, just maybe, when these 4 political professionals got to see how their candidate rolls on a day-to-day basis, they realized that what had looked good on paper from a distance just isn't going to work in practice. Armstrong Williams, remember that name, the only top Carson campaign poobah left, this plays into the story here, portrayed Carson as a candidate who was still learning the nuances of politics. In other words, he's not qualified to be president. He said Carson is studying up on issues and is uninterested in campaign mechanics. Politics is hard. Much harder than Tea Partiers ever want to give it credit for. On the road, Carson receives hearty receptions, but his acquaintances said he is most content after public events to retreat to a pool table where he touts the hand-eye coordination that made him a renowned surgeon. He also likes to do brain teasers or play golf. In other words, he doesn't live, eat, breathe, and is not willing to run over his mother to win an election. Carson occasionally drops by his Alexandria campaign headquarters, but his main interaction with staffers is just once a week at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Well, that's not the best time for such a thing. I'll give you a clue. The church my wife and I attend, the service starts 10 a.m. Sundays. That's not the best time. when he participates in a conference call to go over his schedule for the coming week. Dr. Carson doesn't get involved in the minutiae, Williams said. You have to understand his personality. He's informed, but this whole, well, obviously not in any great detail, judging by the debates, but this whole process is new to him, and he's relying on the judgment of others. Never really a good thing when you're the candidate. Or, in other words, Dr. Carson doesn't have the fire in the belly, and even if he did, he wouldn't know what to do with it. Which political pros and even a pajamaed hack like your humble host can easily recognize. And the four top Carsonites decided their time was being wasted on a post-year vanity candidate and decided to go elsewhere where their talents could be put to better use. Barry! Well, I said it verbally. Let's just put it in the chat room. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually sympathize with Dr. Carson. Part of it is simply human nature. If I suddenly had a whole posse of fans and supporters across the country telling me how great I am and how much they love what I have to say and how much I should be running for president because the country needs me, etc., 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 and by the way, I would just settle for, well, how about a nationally syndicated radio show, huh? How about that? I'll settle for that. Who knows, I might be on my way to that, finally. It'd be a very heady thing and a very difficult thing to watch, to which to say no. Plus, in my case, not having a net worth in 8 figures already and beholding the income-generating possibilities, see why I'd never make a good politician, I'm too gosh darned candid, that could set myself and my family up for life. It would be, for me, well nigh irresistible. That's what all of that was 7 months ago, ladies and gentlemen. Well, now we come to this week. And now, after a meteoric rise and a 3-month ride on top of the polls over the late summer and early fall, Gentle Ben has come around full circle to the disarray in which his campaign began, and for pretty much the exact same reasons. As quotes from the Washington Post, 3 of Ben Carson's high-ranking advisors, including campaign manager Barry Bennett, quit yesterday following an internal power struggle, a sharp decline in the polls, and a week of confusion about who would remain on the retired neurosurgeon's presidential campaign team. Barry Bennett and I have resigned from the Carson campaign effective immediately, said departed communications director Doug Watts in a statement to the Washington Post. We respect the candidate, and we have enjoyed helping him go from far back in the field to top-tier status. Hours later, Carson's deputy campaign manager, Lisa Cohen, also submitted her resignation. Another comeback? You don't tend to get more than one crack at that apple, from my experience. At the heart of it were simmering tensions between Bennett and Williams, Armstrong Williams. Bennett, an experienced GOP operative, wanted the campaign to be more traditional in its setup, fundraising, and messaging. Williams, who has known Carson for more than 2 decades, thought Bennett's approach did not bring out the candidate's strengths. And, to Williams' credit, he may have been right, at least in some ways. For a while, anyway. But not ultimately, given how the game abruptly changed after the Paris and San Bernardino jihadist attacks, and Dr. Carson wasn't able to adapt to it. It was a classic divide between the candidate's friends and professional aides, with each side believing it was working in Carson's best interests. Carson, making his first run for office at age 64, has been enamored with the idea that upstarts and non-professionals could upset the political class, which has really become a cliche, in my opinion. Given Dr. Carson's brilliance, it's difficult to believe, or at least it is for me, to believe he could succumb to such nonsense, which leads me to believe that this idea was force-fed to him by his friends and fans via endless ego-stroking repetition versus him originating it himself. The real breaking point came 2 days before Christmas when Williams and Carson decided together, without Bennett's knowledge, to invite the Washington Post and the Associated Press to Carson's Maryland mansion to discuss, among other topics, a staff shakeup. Wow, sounds like a pure power play by Armstrong Williams, doesn't it? When asked during the interview whether Bennett would stay on, Carson responded, "All of these things are on the table for consideration." The campaign followed that interview with a confusing statement from Carson that expressed 100% confidence in his advisors, which means either the doc is weak and wishy-washy or he's putty in Armstrong Williams' hands. Neither is any kind of confidence builder of what a Carson presidency would mean for the country. I mean, think about such vacillation and double talk in a national security context. But by then, Bennett felt burned by Carson and believed that Williams was taking control of the campaign. Understandably, I would think. He also called it a stupid move for Williams to urge Carson to talk to reporters about the campaign's unrest. Admit and promote your own campaign's weaknesses to a hostile press that already hates you and considers you to be an Uncle Tom racial turncoat? I don't know what it would have given Bennett that idea. Just 1 month earlier, Carson insisted to reporters that Williams had nothing to do with the campaign. Yet by late December, Williams and Carson had been huddling for weeks, discussing possible changes as Carson's poll numbers tumbled. Meanwhile, Carson had been holding separate daily conversations with Bennett about tweaking the campaign. Yeah, this is making me dizzy. Back and forth, back and forth. I mean, here's what it sounds like to me. That Williams was blaming Carson's poll collapse on his professional advisors, the usual Tea Party vilification of GOP political consultants, which is oftentimes justified, but doesn't seem to be in this case, rather than where it belonged, on the candidate in his complete absence of qualifications for the job he's seeking. It's almost like the retired neurosurgeon regurgitated what he was told to say by the most recent advisor to get hold of him. I mean, if any of you Carson fans out there, if you got a better explanation, I'm all ears. I'm not trying to run down Dr. Carson. Either he can't make up his mind, or he doesn't have a mind of his own. One of the two. Take additional note of that last insight of mine from early June on the money-making and brand-establishing possibilities of being drafted into a national campaign. I didn't put inordinate emphasis on it because Dr. Carson is already very wealthy, but evidently lucre was a prime motivation for his friends versus, votes, the silly idea under which his professional advisors have been misconceivably laboring. Several operatives in early voting states, and Iowa in particular, have charged that the campaign has relied too heavily on organic support and online fundraising without making sufficient attempts to organize that energy in a more tangible way. Get out the vote efforts, in other words. Ground game. Others accuse the campaign of misusing its funds, reinvesting the bulk of its earnings into raising more money. Chartered flights and into bloated campaign salaries instead of building the sort of robust infrastructure in early voting states that will be crucial for whomever locks down the nomination. In short, Dr. Carson didn't have the fire in the belly, never did, ran for president because all his friends and fans told him he should, but his heart was never really in it. He rose to the top tier and brief frontrunner status based on the GOP grassroots mindless outsider fetish and not being a Democrat phallus like Donald Trump. And some of his friends and fans evidently saw him as a cash cow that could be milked for all they could gain off of his candidacy. You know, it's tempting to think of Ben Carson as the victim in this equation. As I've said all along, again, I like the man. I immensely respect him. But he's the candidate. His name is on the campaign. Ergo, he is responsible for all of it, lock, stock, and barrel. Because running for president was ultimately not his idea, he was drafted, in other words, run, Ben, run. His was a figurehead candidacy from day one by definition. So the wonder would have been if it hadn't begun and ended in complete roiling chaos. That is, in other words, what you get with incompetent amateurs versus seasoned professionals. There's a lesson in that for Tea Partiers if they were at all willing to learn it. Sorry, folks, gotta call it like I see it. And that's how I see it. Now this, I'll tell you what, this has been in a 48-hour period, folks. 48-hour period. In fact, I saw this particular story arose on Wednesday, and I saw it, and I thought, yeah, let's just wait for the other shoe to drop. You know, that's why I waited to comment on it. Because I just knew that I am doomed to a life of slow, inexorable impoverishment in Barack Obama's prison economy, and that the near-Earth object-sized other shoe was going to drop like a hammer. And it didn't even take 24 hours. Now, what am I referring to? Well, there was a story that the United States, the State Department, was going to announce sanctions on Iran for their illegal ballistic missile tests last month and back in October. I thought, wow, the Obama administration imposing sanctions? Reimposing sanctions on the Iranians? Really? That doesn't sound like the Obama administration. I mean, Barack Obama's not going to do anything to endanger his Neville Chamberlain moment, his landmark achievement, the ultimate accomplishment of smart power, or by reimposing or declining to lift any of the sanctions that he committed to lifting, $150 billion worth, plus a nuclear weapons arsenal. And so I said, I'm not going to touch that because this just can't be true. Well, here we go. From Newsmax. The White House has delayed imposing new financial sanctions on Iran over its ballistic missile program, the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday. Not even 24 hours. Man, this is just amazing. On Wednesday, the Journal, citing U.S. officials, said the Obama administration was preparing to sanction nearly a dozen companies and individuals in Iran, Hong Kong, and the United Arab Emirates for their role in developing Iran's ballistic missile program. U.S. sanctions were expected to be formally announced this week, the newspaper said. Sources familiar with the situation confirmed to Reuters that the United States was, note the tense, was preparing sanctions. You know, in the words of Commodore Matthew Decker from the Star Trek, the original series episode, The Doomsday Machine, when asked by Captain Kirk, Matt, your crew is on the third planet. No. He said, Decker said, Kirk asked him, Matt, where's your crew? And he said, on the third planet. And Kirk said, there is no third planet. And Decker looked up and said, don't you think I know that? There was, but not anymore. Well, and along the same lines, They were preparing sanctions, but not anymore. How did I know that King Hussein was going to overrule Foggy Bottom on any sanctions reimposition? Simple. This single sentence from Wednesday's story announcing them. Iranian officials have previously warned that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would view such new U.S. sanctions as a violation of the nuclear deal. Which it probably would be. One of the secret deals that Obama wouldn't let anybody see, if you recall that. Which is, number one, undoubtedly true, and number two, all it took to rouse his infernal majesty into springing into action on the mullah's behalf, even from the beach and wherever the hell he's staying in Hawaii. Never forget that the sole motivation behind the Iran nuclear deal has always been Barack Obama's Neville Chamberlain moment. His foreign policy legacy as the first president in 36 years to make the landmark diplomatic breakthrough of achieving peace and not a treaty, he doesn't do treaties, but agreement of alliance with the Islamic Empire of Iran. It's never been about impeding Tehran's nuclear arsenal. Like everything else, it had been and is and ever shall be all about Barack Hussein Obama. And he will never, ever allow anything that runs the slightest risk of Iran backing out of that landmark breakthrough capitulation that is going to plunge the Middle East and maybe the whole world into nuclear Armageddon. So, he delayed sanctions reimposition over the 2 medium-range ballistic missile tests of missiles whose sole purpose is to deliver nuclear warheads to intended targets. And he will keep delaying them indefinitely, kind of like the Keystone XL pipeline, until he decides the coast is clear to cancel them altogether. Because legacy. You can absolutely set your clocks by this perfidious ass clown. You really can. Now, that was 24 hours ago, approximately. And then came this story. Today, this morning, assuming I can find it here. Oh, is this it? No, that's not it. Or is it? No. It's here somewhere. Ah, here it is. So, remember the timeline. Wednesday, the State Department announces reimposition of sanctions against the Iranians for their illegal, under a UN Security Council resolution, ballistic missile tests of October, and then last month. We wrote about both at politicalpistachio.com at the time, talked about them on this program. Then, yesterday, Obama announces that he's overruled the State Department and the sanctions reimposition will be delayed. And now, 24 hours after that, we come to this story. Obama regime refuses... no, that's... Damn, that's not the right one either. Okay, well, let's see where I can find it here. Has to be somewhere. Oh, that's because it hadn't... Okay. I gotta refresh the page. That was what the issue was. No wonder I couldn't find it. Well, that's taking its own sweet time. Let's try it this way. Iran rewards Obama for sanctions deferral with pledge to ramp up its illegal missile program. Man, this is going fast. This is like every day. It's just sometimes these stories take a while to unfold. Not this one. Smart power, the gift that keeps on giving. From, let's see, from Newsmax. A series of Iranian officials vowed on, so not just one, I think they're trying to make a point, vowed today to expand Tehran's missile capabilities, a challenge to the United States, which has threatened to impose new sanctions even as the vast bulk of its measures against Iran are due to be lifted under a nuclear deal. As long as the United States supports Israel, we will expand our missile capabilities. The Revolutionary Guard's second-in-command, Brigadier General Hossein Salami, Salami sounds funnier, was quoted as saying by the Fars news agency, F-A-R-S, not F-A-R-C-E, that would be MSNBC. Gee, was that in the deal? That the United States can't support Israel? Because it ought to be beyond obvious that the United States does not support Israel anymore. Unless by support the mullahs mean haven't yet eradicated on our behalf. I'm betting it was in the deal. I'm pretty sure all of you are too. Probably one of the secret side deals that Obama refuses to disclose to anybody, most especially Congress, by the way. We don't have enough space to store. This is what the Iranian officials are saying today. We don't have enough space to store our missiles. All our depots and underground facilities are full, he said in Friday prayers in Tehran. Yeah, it's just the place to say it, I guess. Well, then, I guess they're going to have to fire off the rest, now aren't they? Probably in our general direction, I'd imagine, or Israel's, if, they don't feel like adding additional stages to the missiles. Defense Minister Hossein Dekhan said Iran would boost its missile program and had never agreed to restrictions on it. And I'm guessing he's right about that. Iran's missile capabilities have never been the subject of negotiations with the Americans and will never be, he was quoted as saying by Press TV, an Iranian state channel. Yeah, of course, there are UN Security Council resolutions that prohibited the Iranian missile program, but if Obama won't enforce his own deal with Iran, which, just as a reminder, gives the mullahs everything they ever demanded and a whole lot more besides, in the secret side deals, of course, he is sure as you-know-what not going to enforce anybody else's. But parenthetically, do you know you can look up curse words in Farsi on Google? Yeah, you can, and they'll tell you what they are too. Oh, I just love. There are a lot of things that are not good about Google, but that's one of them. You can look up curse words in Farsi. If the Iranians have no intention of using nuclear weapons, let me just throw this question out for you. Why do they even need a massive missile inventory, including ICBMs? Well, they want to put the Ayatollahs on the moon or something? And has it really been only 48 hours since this story arc began? God, it seems like weeks. Okay, what do we got? What do we got next year? Oh, now this, I tell you what, I am heartened by this, but a little bit surprised. The first indication that our, at least congressional leaders, were starting to regain a doorknob's worth of common sense, was when Mitch McConnell brought up the possibility of maybe restoring the Patriot Act. And at the time, and on this program, I said, well, I'd love to see it. It'll be a step in the right direction, much needed. It was stupid to gut the Patriot Act back in May at Rand Paul's instigation, but I'll believe it when I see it. Well, we're not there yet, but this is an indication that, you know what, there might be public support for restoring the Patriot Act. And it's manifested in an Associated Press / NORC Center for Public Affairs Research poll that came out today. Now, if you think my new year is off to an entirely expectedly crappy start, oh, did I mention the $722.93 repair bill for one of my cars yesterday when I was really only going in to get an oil change? Yeah, that's no joke. Trust the Midas touch. Well, they touched me all right. Well, they told me that if the repair wasn't done, one of my wheels could fall off. I said, oh, okay, well, yeah, can't argue with that. Drive along and all of a sudden, whoop! Yeah, don't need that. But if you think that my new year is off to a crappy start, take a gander at that of Kentucky Senator and GOP presidential candidate, he thinks, Rand Paul, whose vicarious White House campaign for his father is meeting the exact same ruinous fate as the past ones did, and now his greatest Senate achievement, the gutting of the Patriot Act, is starting to slip away as well. A majority of Americans say they support warrantless government surveillance of the internet communications of U.S. citizens, according to a new poll by the Associated Press and the NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. It's at least somewhat important for the government to sacrifice freedoms to ensure safety, most say in the survey. According to the new poll, 56% of Americans favor and only 28% oppose the ability of the government to conduct surveillance on internet communications without needing to get a warrant. That includes such surveillance on U.S. citizens. So close to a 2-to-1 margin, even figuring in the comparatively large number of undecideds. I'd call that a dramatic about-face from 7 months ago, wouldn't you? Majorities both of Republicans, 67%, and Democrats, 55%, favor government surveillance of Americans' internet activities to watch for suspicious activity that might be connected to Islamic terrorism. Now, to be fair, I'm guessing that the Democrat figure, the 55%, is more of a reference to Obama's NSA spying on congressional Republicans, something with which Tea Partiers should be happy, because that way we can all find out just how complicit in Democrat budget priorities Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell really are, right? Yeah, I'm going to be the same sarcastic a-hole I was in 2015, folks. Nothing's going to change. Independents are more divided, with 40% in favor and 35% opposed. Only a third of Americans under 30, in other words, young people who haven't lived long enough to know any better, but nearly 2/3 30 and older, I'm holding up my hand for the Jasmine's can, support warrantless surveillance. Listen to your elders, kids, in other words. The poll finds that for most Americans, safety concerns trump civil liberties at least some of the time. In other words, the William Stryker principle. You remember that scene in X-Men First Class where Emma Frost is, incarcerated in an interrogation room with the one-way mirror, and William Stryker you know, the father of the major striker in the other X-Men films, X2, X-Men United, X-Men Origins Wolverine, and X-Men 5 Days of Future Past. And he's talking to the CIA director. Was that John Foster Dulles in 1962? I can't remember. But he says, times like this, referring to, you know, this discovery of mutants. In times like this, security is more important than liberty. Hence the William Stryker principle. Or put another way, it was all fine and good for Benjamin Franklin to say, quote, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. It was easy for Benjamin Franklin to say that a quarter millennium ago, and Barbary pirates, i.e. Islamic jihadists, weren't pouring into American territory to murder its inhabitants. But it's just as sensible to point out that one cannot enjoy one's essential liberty in the grave. The reasonable compromise between the two, philosophical bales of hay, being the Patriot Act, by whose corpse Rand Paul's burrow is now philosophically starving to death. Hold on a second while I mute that. More than half, 54%, say it's sometimes necessary for the government to sacrifice freedoms to fight terrorism, while 45% think that it's not necessary. On a more general level, 42% say it's more important for the government to ensure America's safety than to protect citizens' rights, while 27% think rights are more important and 31% rate both equally. Goodness gracious. Now, what could possibly have transpired, do you think, that could have brought about such a dramatic shift of public sentiment back towards doorknob common sense? Oh. Concerns about terrorism have risen over the past 2 years. In the latest poll, nearly 6 in 10 Americans say they are at least somewhat concerned that they or their family might be victims of a terrorist attack, after just 3 in 10 said so just 2 years ago. And nothing doubles public awareness of danger like hard, grisly evidence of actual danger. In other words, it's not just a hypothetical. 6 in 10 Americans now think that the recent attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, California, indicate an increased risk of attacks against Western countries, while 37% think the risk is about the same as it was before. 3/4 of Republicans and majorities of both Democrats and independents think the attacks are an indication of increased risk. Americans are similarly concerned about both domestic terrorism and possible attacks by Islamic fundamentalist groups, with about 6 in 10 saying they're at least somewhat concerned about each. Democrats and Republicans are about equally likely to say they're concerned about domestic terrorism, but Republicans are much more likely than Democrats to say they're concerned about attacks by Islamic fundamentalists, 67% versus 47%. But even that last Democrat figure is still a near majority of them. Call it the Calvin and Hobbes principle, ladies and gentlemen. In one Sunday edition of the popular and way too short-lived comic strip, Calvin is at school one morning, his head propped on his hand, daydreaming about dinosaurs instead of paying attention in class. His teacher, Miss Wormwood, thwacks a yardstick down on his desk 2 inches in front of his nose to get his attention. And it works. For a while. Over the final 3 panels, he goes from his eyes being as big around as hubcaps gradually back to being once again obliviously riding pterodactyls in the clear blue cloud-flecked skies of his imagination. That's the way it is with human nature and the need for constant vigilance. Something terrible happens, like the 9/11 attacks, that seizes everyone's attention. Yet the more time that passes since the terrible event, the more the public's attention wanes and their lazy, complacent decadence reasserts itself. And thus is the next terrible event facilitated, after which the futile cycle repeats itself. We the people went from shock and anguish and fear and vengeful anger in 2001 to electing an Islamo-communist president in 2008. Several lucky dodged bullets, like the panty bomber nearly blowing up an airliner over Detroit, Michigan 6 years ago, and the Times Square bomber almost blowing up that iconic location with a truck bomb the following spring, reinforced the lazy, complacent decadence sufficiently to re-elect the Islamo-communist in 2012. And 7 months ago, the Patriot Act was dismantled, and the walls of separation and bureaucratic hoops of jumping through were rebuilt. And then cometh Paris and San Bernardino, and all the attacks yet to come, and the vicious cycle starts anew. It's a pity human nature isn't malleable, huh? It's also a pity that Senator Paul's philosophical carcass is too small to use as a blunt object tenderizer of it, because his burrow is really starting to reek. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. The Obama administration, it's kind of a companion story. The Obama administration is still refusing to track foreign visitors who overstay their visas. This guy's a never-ending source of gallows humor. It really is. And as you probably already surmised, that is a direct violation of federal law as well. It's from the New York Times for the quote. Federal officials admit they've lost track. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. They've lost track of how many foreign visitors overstay their visas every year, despite a nearly 20-year-old law requiring the government to develop a tracking system. Federal agencies haven't even provided a new report to Congress on overstays since 1994. How are any of us still alive? Since 1996, Congress has required that an exit system be put in place to determine visa overstays. The House Oversight Committee sternly noted prior to a hearing on the issue on December 17th. The biometric exit system has yet to be put in place, and DHS has failed to issue a mandated report to Congress on the number of overstays who were made in the U.S. in violation of the law. So, yes, the Clinton regime and the Bush 43 administration are included in this dragnet. But you'll notice that of all the numerous things and issues over which, and for which, Barack Obama demonized George W. Bush over the second half of the previous decade, a failure to track potentially hostile foreigners, to say nothing of keeping them out of the country in the first place, was not one of them. And his own regime is failing to do so deliberately, not from incompetence or neglect. They just don't want to. In other words, because they don't want to appear Islamophobic. Lawmakers worry radical Islamic terrorists, pardon the redundancy, could exploit the visa program because the United States doesn't routinely collect biometric information on people leaving the country, including fingerprints, iris scans, and photographs. And at the December 17th House Oversight hearing, an official revealed that of 9,500 visas revoked over terrorism concerns since 2001, the United States doesn't know where any of those former visa holders are. Oh my goodness gracious. Having accurate data on who is coming and going, not who is pretending to be coming and going, is essential to curtailing the insidious and increasingly direct threat that ISIS is loudly declaring at our homeland. Janice Kephart, former counsel for the Senate Judiciary Committee, and a staff member on the 9/11 Commission, which also recommended this, one of the few actual nonpartisan constructive recommendations they made, warned Congress last year, according to the New York Times. At the House Oversight hearing last month, however, Alan Burson, the Assistant Commissar for International Affairs at DHS, conceded, "We don't know." Maybe he did his Jar Jar Binks impression. "We still don't know." When asked about the number of visa overstays, they don't have any frickin' idea, folks. One 1997 report by the Immigration and Naturalization Service indicates that the overstayed visa gambit accounts for nearly half of the 30 million illegal aliens in this country, which only magnifies the culpability of this White House and this planned invasion, as it isn't remotely just a matter of refusing to control the border, but a deliberate choice they're making, again, in flagrant violation of federal law, to say nothing of Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, have no fear, be of good cheer. The Obama administration promises to have an overstay report we can believe in, issued within 6 months. Trust them, I guess. With an avalanche of excuses for why they didn't issue it 7 years ago to tide us over in the meantime. Oh, and I'm sure it'll be delivered with a bang, too. Oh, mio mio. And then, lastly but not leastly but not, well, no, it is lastly, so it's not leastly. Or maybe it is leastly, I don't know. But I got kind of a kick out of it. Again, in a gallows sense. And this one doesn't have directly to do with Barack Obama. Notice the modifier there. But rather Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And something he said yesterday, I think it was yesterday. No, it's this morning, just today. He compared, or he invoked Adolf Hitler in a positive sense. Might this be why the NSA still spies on the Turkish strongman? I don't know. Could be. The quote comes from Newsmax. Final item in the stack for today. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, or Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is pushing for executive powers, or expanding his executive powers, cites Hitler's Germany as an example of an effective presidential system. And I'll let that sink in for a moment. In comments broadcast by Turkish media today, well, strictly speaking, he's not wrong, folks. I mean, Although that does depend on just exactly what it is he's intending to do with these powers. I mean, for instance, I'm certain that those remarks have grabbed Benjamin Netanyahu's undivided attention, like holding two tiny spherical green objects in one's fist seizes the attention of Kermit the Frog. Erdogan wants to change the Turkish constitution to turn the ceremonial role of president into that of a chief executive, a Turkish version of the system in the United States, France, or Russia. Wow, none of those are constructive examples, are they? Not even ours, given the past 7 years. To which there's no doubt in my mind that Führer Erdogan was making implicit reference. Asked on his return from a visit to Saudi Arabia late on Thursday whether an executive presidential system was possible while maintaining the unitary structure of the state, he said, "There are already examples in the world. You can see it when you look at Hitler's Germany." Well, since Erdogan brought him up, here are some randomly assorted Hitler quotes. You ready? "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." Obama! 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 Yeah, that's kind of creepy. "Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it." Gee, Barack Obama lives by that one, although it's become threadbare of late. "Those who want to live, let them fight. And those who do not want to fight in this world of eternal struggle do not deserve to live." Well, if you tone that down, sand the hard edges off of it, and put it in political terms, I won't even going to go there. "The victor will never be asked if he told the truth," or as Barack Obama put it, when was that, almost 7 years ago, "I won." "I do not see why man should not be just as cruel as nature." Which brings us back to Erdogan and his dream of restoring a Turkish-led caliphate. "By the skillful and sustained use of propaganda, one can make a people see even heaven as hell, or an extremely wretched life as paradise." All together now. Yes, one can! "Demoralize the enemy from within by surprise, terror, sabotage, assassination. This is the war of the future." Gee, does that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? "If you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed." Gee, there's another Obama lodestone. "It is not truth that matters, but victory." Wow, there's another. "All propaganda has to be popular and has to accommodate itself to the comprehension of the least intelligent of those whom it seeks to reach." Well, there's the Obama trifecta, folks. I can't top that. Now, do you see now why Erdogan cited the United States as one of his examples of effective dictatorships, right along with Putin's Russia and Hitler's Germany? As the Turkish president will doubtless say after he attains the new constitution he seeks, and as the cheering crowds surge past him for 5 hours beneath the balcony of the presidential palace in Ankara, "We have the power. Now our gigantic work begins." Mine begins on Monday, hopefully. See you tomorrow on the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, where I am hosting all the way through, and then have a great weekend. See you Monday on PatriotInsightRadio.com.